Order. The question is the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And Deputy Speaker, it's a privilege to be able to speak on the motion moved by my good friend, the member for Barrow, and I also want to congratulate him on his speech, and also to the member for McNamara. Despite our partisan differences, he has been consistent, and this is one of these issues that I think brings this whole chamber together, because International Holocaust Remembrance Day is a day that should bring people together, to echo the sentiments of the previous speakers, so that we never forget, so that we never allow the repeat of history. And I start that by acknowledging that you and I, Deputy Speaker, have been to the memorial to a genocide in Armenia only a couple of years ago. And it was because that genocide was forgotten and never got its full acknowledgement that crimes have been able to be perpetuated in its legacy throughout the 20th century. And of course, International Holocaust Remembrance Day is about reaffirming our commitment to say we will never forget, and the crimes committed against, of course, the Jewish people and many other minorities who are the victims of the Holocaust because of the atrocities that were committed by the Nazi Party. And particularly for the electorate of Goldstein, it's so critical. We're home bordering the electorate of McNamara, where we share Melbourne's predominant Jewish community. Particularly in McNamara, you have many Holocaust survivors, but there are much of the Jewish community sits in Goldstein as well. And so whether directly or indirectly, people are touched by the legacy of the Holocaust. In fact, the Holocaust Centre and Museum in Victoria sits on our border. And I'm very proud that the Morrison government has contributed significant money, $10 million, towards its ongoing development, because a critical part of addressing the legacy and the memory and keeping it alive of the Holocaust so that we never repeat or allow it to happen again is to make sure that young Australians are fully aware of the events that occurred. Not just what occurred in the human toll, but in the events that led up to it, and the enculturation of bigotry and anti-Semitism that led to one of the greatest atrocities in human history, and to make sure that they're never repeated. But that can only be done if we keep the spirit of people alive and their stories, and that it was not a single act, though there were very important single acts in the process, but what was tolerated, and that we can never allow such bigotry to find its home on our shores or anywhere else in the world. And that's why we all carry a sense of responsibility to call it out. Because when we allow and tolerate such bigotry and we turn a blind eye to it, it amounts, and particularly in terms of times of crisis or events that can lead to it becoming a groundswell. And I've spoken in this chamber many times, Deputy Speaker, with other members about the rise of anti-Semitism, not just in Australia but around the world, and how we cannot tolerate. The Executive Council of Jewry regularly produces reports highlighting the disturbing rise of anti-Semitism, including acts of violence, both verbal and physical, against school children in parts of our country, where rabbis or those of Orthodox Jewish faith face harassment unjustly within the community, whether it's simply them driving their car down the street or the graffiti of school buses. But part of the role of standing up and making sure we remember International Holocaust Remembrance Day is also a burden and responsibility that we all share. And I was very proud in just this year that Mrs. Irma Hanna was provided an OAM for her service to the community, particularly through the Jewish Holocaust Centre in the Goldstein electorate. People like Irma are instrumental in ensuring the memory of the victims of the Holocaust lives on, and highlights the importance of Holocaust funding and education that I would hope we would celebrate with a bipartisan spirit. Because it's when people's lives and stories are told that Australians get an idea of the lived experience and the legacy that occurred. And it's only when we remember those stories vividly and with discussion that we can honour the memory of those lives lost. And in the words of Holocaust survivor and author Elie Wiesel, To forget the dead would be akin to forgetting them a second time, and that's why we say never again.